Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
This was our last Patreon exclusive, and we will be getting another up in another, I'd say today or tomorrow at the latest. And again, we have a new series that's going up with some deep meditations, with some energy realignments, and then with actually teaching how to do it yourself as well. Again, practice makes perfect, but here you see an F-35, which are very expensive planes, dropping to the ground and blowing up. Thankfully, the pilot was safe. He ejected. It's interesting what Cindy picked up on this. She feels that it was some sort of energy coming from above where the plane was that basically kind of turned off the switch on the plane.
Yeah, I mean, this energy, again and again, when I looked, it kept coming from above. So there was something up there that zapped this plane, depleted the energy, which made everything not work. I mean, look at that thing. It's falling like a toy. It's just dropping like a rock. Just all of its momentum, all of its life, all of its energy just sucked out in an instant. Or, it was cut off in some way, shape, or form. I'm not an electrician, so I don't know exactly how those things work, but I do see and feel all of the electronics just blank, everything going black, everything in that plane. So that's very, very dangerous. So something like that on, a large scale, I mean, these things would then be absolutely useless in a time where they could be used or needed.
Yeah, and again, components in much of our military equipment come from the fine dining ware country, and that could be a problem because if there are any sort of backdoor switches maybe being activated by a signal, perhaps from a satellite in orbit, and then all of a sudden you start having your fighters dropping out of the air like that, your superiority is gone. If you do look, and just is like totally off on a tangent, obviously, China has the largest military in the world by far as personnel. The U.S. is really the nation with air superiority, or has been. But again, if you were to have an advantage like that with chips that come from China that could be activated via some sort of signal, or the technology itself to kind of go in and fry electronic systems. After all, much of the public is aware of what an EMP could do, literally turning everything off for long periods of time, and really, in some cases, totally frying systems. So they would have to be totally replaced. The air superiority could be lost. And that would be the thing that really NATO and the U.S. would have, is air superiority, unless, again, there was some caveat. By the way, talking about the air, White House clarifies Dronegate. Yes, the New Jersey UAPs were actually authorized by the FAA for research purposes. Here you have, it was almost like an aside. Let's listen to her.
And before I turn to questions, I do have news directly from the President of the United States that was just shared with me in the Oval Office. From President Trump directly, an update on the New Jersey drones. After research and study, the drones that were flying over New Jersey in large numbers were authorized to be flown by the FAA for research and various other reasons. Many of these drones were also hobbyists, recreational, and private individuals that enjoy flying drones. In time, it got worse due to curiosity. This was not the enemy.
Wow, okay, so that was nothing. Okay, big nothing burger. It sounds like a cover-up, to a degree. It feels like a cover-up to a degree. Again, not everything seemed mechanical. There were a lot of orbs, things that seemed to be more plasmoid in nature, but yes, also many that were very much just simply mechanical. So, the question here is, why did Biden lie and say they didn't know? Well, everything that was done, it seems, by the last administration is being undone currently And I think it's just that tension and that obvious, inevitable march towards what we could see as a divorce, in the U.S. Obviously, there's a lot to agree to disagree on.
I'm looking at this, and the two words that stick out so clearly are research purposes, but they don't say what kind of research. And when I felt into this the first time, I felt that we were the ones being researched, that they were looking at our social media. They were watching our behavior to see what we would do. Research purposes. Now, I don't know, has the control system ever done that before? Gee, we'd have to look back and see, would they ever do that? But then the other part I got was it drowning out a lot of things having to do with our star families coming to see us, our star families actually coming to see us and getting people to look the other way, while our souls are literally growing, while we are expanding, while we are ascending, and they keep us looking the other way.
Yes. Again, for a lot of humanity that's been sleepwalking through everything that's going on, it's going to be tough to navigate the awakening. Most of the people that watch us on a regular basis are awake and get the bigger picture and realize that there's non-Homo sapiens involved in all this. And there's always agendas. Here the Congressman Jeff Van Drew was saying there was an Iranian mothership off the U.S. East Coast, obviously. Iran is really the only nation now at this point, as Syria has fallen. The only one that was listed going way back to the 9/11 kickoff of all the nonstop wars that have occurred. There were 7 nations that were supposed to be taken over. Again, 7 nations in 5 years. It took a lot longer, and 6 nations have been basically have been changed. Let's say political structure. Syria is the last. Iran's the only one left. So, again, whether you're looking at it from a neocon perspective or what have you, a PNAC, Project for a New American Century, this is the realization. There's really only one left. And then when we look to the banking system that's in place, I was reading an article that was talking about bringing electricity to, a third of a billion people in Africa. And, again, going through the World Bank, whenever you see things like World Bank, and this is why we get ostracized, because this is the reality. It's the money, and it's the money control system that keeps us in control. As soon as humans start to get outside of that system, barter and trade, come up with alternatives that cannot be manipulated, not manipulated on the grand scale, then we could really start to have some freedom, because, again, there's all these different agendas going on, and there's a huge push to, basically attack Iran is really what is in the plans. It's been in the plans for so many years. This is what I'm going to be doing a video. We're going to do a video over on EE Arts, unless there's something that breaks, just showing how people might not realize that they could plan things decades in advance, even hundreds of years in advance. That's the part that I see that people still don't understand when they appear to be, have their minds boggled by some things that the system does. But we go back to maps that were out in the 80s showing that Greenland and Canada is part of this North American Union. So, we covered the McKinley connection with President Trump. Now, I like doing those timeless ones because, after the fact, if they don't pull it, which they probably will pull it, if something happens and, Trump does end up being more like McKinley than you might, imagine at this point in time, chances are they'll pull that video because, again, they have to constantly scrub history. They have to constantly scrub all the connections to what's really happening. And here you have Italy breaks ranks Will the WHO survive? In a bold and unprecedented move, Italy is purportedly preparing to follow President Trump's lead and withdrawal from the WHO. Wow, okay. What's interesting too is the fact that when you look at this, they were basically, he was up here basically saying, oh, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. But listen to 47's words carefully, and it sounds like it's all about money. And it sounds like if he could get a lowball deal in, he would go right back into it. But really, for humanity, in my mind, this is my opinion, one person's opinion, the pathway to freedom starts with disbanding all these structures. And yes, this would be one of the top structures. The UN would be another, and you could go on down the line. It has to unravel. It has to unravel. Now, the thing is controlling the narrative and controlling the unraveling. So, they withdraw from one puppeteered agency and shift everybody right into another one. This is what they do all the time. There was another article that was talking about how these NGOs keep springing up all the time, and it's the same cast of characters. So again, like if we did say have a world where you saw the big players like PF Iser and Mod E Erna and all these other big companies that have done so much damage in more ways than one dissolved. In this world, they'll just reappear in another corporation popping up out of the blue, and they could hide. This is why the system is what it is. Corporation. The root word is corpse. They are soulless entities. If you were to make it so that corporations were illegal, that would be a devastating blow to the system, because this is how they hide.
It is, and our thoughts and our emotions and our energy that we put out there really make a big difference. So never ever discount yourself when you're thinking about, I can't do anything to change the world. Realize that the power does lie within you, because thoughts are things. So when we all put it out there as co-creators to melt this system, like Mike is putting it out there, to melt these big entities, that has an effect on them. And see, this is exactly what they have been afraid of. It's nice to see it coming to fruition, because at the very least, I can point it out and I could say, see, this is what we do when we work together and we want to co-create something. This is how it manifests. It's starting to melt, and we should never, ever, ever lose hope.
No, and you have this tweet from 47. The U.S. military just entered the great state of California. Interesting the way he says that too, right? Wow, okay. It's almost like just listen to that first line. The U.S. military just entered the great state of California, and under emergency powers, turned on the water flowing abundantly from the Pacific Northwest and beyond. So again, when you see everything that's going on, and you have politicians that just, they lay it on thick to cover their real intentions. Their real intentions are just getting richer and richer and richer. This is, they're all about the ego and putting themselves first. Well, you could have turned on the water a long time ago. We really, again, we understand Operation Popeye, that we washed away villages in the Vietnam War. You're talking 50 years ago or more, 50 to 60 years ago, you could have cloud seeded and alleviated any sort of wildfire situation. It just, there was no will to do that. They just simply didn't want. So don't stop there. Don't stop there. And again, I think this to me is a foreshadowing of some sort of internal conflict. That's what I feel with that. California Farm Bureau says migrant farm worker deportation fears have virtually halted the Central Valley's citrus harvest. Again, this is where everything is so intertwined and intertangled. And here, this is obviously a tense argument type of discussion going on here. We're talking about, what's really going on with the migration, because, the ones on the left clearly want to make it be like, well, now you can't have anything get picked. There's no, fruit's just not going to get picked because we rely on again, immigrants coming in to do all the picking, because, people that are here don't want to do those type of jobs. It was interesting to note that in this speech at the end, what we get is, well, don't worry, automation's coming. Nobody's going to have to pick anything in the not too far future. This is part of what the transition is. They are anticipating, obviously, to lose maybe a whole digit. When we talk about how many people are really on this planet, they'll tell you roughly 8 billion. Again, we've had all these forecasts, the DEA, GEL numbers, for instance, which again, are giving us inexplicably like 560 million people that seem to vanish somewhere in the course of this particular year that we are in. When you look at what's going on, it's such a purposeful division. Purposeful. And there are some things that are just blatantly obvious. So the argument here is, well, these people that are being deported, they're not out there picking fruit off of strawberry vines in California or grapes or what have you. They're in inner cities collecting checks and not having to do anything. And again, you have people that are trying to come in legally and they're having issues. So, this is where this breaks down into an argument and one cutting the other off. The reality is, just like this, listen to this one. Here, let's go to the beginning. When we're talking about the egg crisis.
Of everything, not just eggs. Bacon, groceries, gasoline have increased because of the inflationary policies of the last administration. As far as the egg shortage, what's also contributing to that is that the Biden administration and the Department of Agriculture directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens, which has led to a lack of chicken supply in this country, therefore a lack of egg supply, which is leading to the shortage. So I will leave you with this point. This is an example of why it's so incredibly important that the Senate moves swiftly to confirm all of President Trump's nominees, including his nominee for the United States Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, who is already speaking with Kevin Hassett, who's leading the economic team here at the White House, on how we can address the egg shortage in this country. As for costs, I laid out the plethora of ways that President Trump has addressed saving costs for the American people over the past week. He looks forward to continuing to doing that in the days of...
Yeah, they killed 100 million chickens, and this is not the first time. There's been so many mass cullings of the food supply. It's just you can't keep up with it. And now, again, the food costs are insane. It's insane. Our food bill, and just speaking for us personally, is way more than anything else that we pay. It's more than our mortgage. It's more than all our other bills. It is, for us, I would say food is 50 or more % of our total expenditure. So, and that's increasing. And if we look to the Polish psychic Christoph, he says, wait till April, because, I think that's the first economic bump and perhaps a military escalation around there. It's again just insanity. It's so clear what's happening. Again, they want us, eating only what they want to hand us as far as food goes. And people are catching on to that, and you want to eat as clean as possible, otherwise you end up a statistic, and not in a good way.
Well, you end up sick, and then you end up, handing yourself over to the medical system that they've provided for you. Because a lot of people don't know about alternative healing, but they're certainly learning. They're definitely learning. And that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves, is because we have to eat where we are not being poisoned. And that is getting so expensive. It's getting so hard to cover that. But for, our personal reasons, our health, our work. I mean, this is how we have to eat. And yeah, it's really cut in deep. We're not going to change anything. We're not going to eat, something that's not so good just to save a few bucks. Actually, we'll just eat less. And I think to keep people healthy, they should come with that attitude too. Just eat less and start learning to grow at home. Chickens, they're not super hard to keep. You just, there's a few things you need to know. But they have, eggs are wonderful for you. Find a friend with a milk cow, help them support that milk cow. Maybe do a milk share where you're helping them with the feed and the grain and things of that nature. To start making friends with your fellow farmers. Become a farmer. Maybe you're in a position where you could get a little something started. We need to do something, because I don't think the snapping back is going to happen very quickly. I think people are better off, to take it into their own hands, their destiny into their own hands, because we see what happens when we rely on someone else.
Absolutely. And here people have to wait 5 hours to basically just go down the street. You have to go get a pass to get to your own home. And it's just ridiculous. This is, of course, over in California, in LA, with all the wildfires that we've seen. That is just absolutely ridiculous. This is exactly what's wrong with this whole world, and it's becoming just so obvious. And it's purposely obvious, because this is part of how they divide us up. People will have their number one issue, and depending on who you are, your number one issue might be totally different than somebody else's. And then they try to get you to turn a blind eye to all the things that your side is literally doing wrong. That is cause for concern. But because you're primarily concerned with this one thing, then you start to overlook all the other things. This is how the system works. This is how it jumbles and crisscrosses everything up and gets us coming and going. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has revoked General Mark Milley's security detail. Now, of course, the sickle maker had the same thing, and security clearance. He's now planning demoting the general. We're heading, you could see this, we're heading towards a civil war, some sort of civil breakdown and disturbance. Meanwhile, Kansas, this says currently experiencing the largest ever reported outbreak of TB in the U.S. Other sources are saying that's not the case at all. Again, it's funny how, looking at this DNA, it looks like clouds, doesn't it? It looks like clouds up in the sky, those clouds that don't go away, that come on down. Build your immune system. Again, we've talked about terrain theory versus germ theory. And look into terrain theory. Understand you got to boost your immune system. You must detox daily if you are to make it through these times. So, and then here, 47 this is a very touchy topic that we don't really like to touch. But, you can just see that, again, everything that was done by Biden-Harris is being undone. And, the pendulum just swings wider each time. It just keeps going wider and wider and wider. And nothing was getting done in North Carolina. And now, all of a sudden, there's all sorts of work going on. And here you see 47 has signed a new executive order to fast-track the repairs of all roads and bridges in western North Carolina. And in fact, there's a lot of heavy equipment going in. People are seeing it, and it's like, well, why couldn't they have done that earlier? Because they didn't want to, because the purpose is dividing Americans. The purpose is pushing us to the very, very brink and then nudging us off and hoping that we'll all grab onto somebody else and pull everybody off with us. Meanwhile, 6%, I think it was, or is it 8%, of federal workers, 6% of federal workers work full-time in office. Wow, 94% are not full-time and not working in the office. And anyway, they're offering buyouts where you'll get paid for about 8 months' time to find something else to do. There's going to be this massive automation between now and 2030. that transpires, and that's necessary for what the system has in mind. Because again, this is a world where they're planning on it being a lot more open and empty spaces, if you know what I mean. As you see over here, boy, it looks like they're a cute little couple, doesn't it? Yeah, again, this everything that we see is completely planned for decades and even centuries. And I know people won't be able to grasp that. But then can you grasp this? Look at this.
Some things that seem impossible, you don't know that they're impossible until you try. And maybe some things take a little bit of extra, I don't know, training, but things are doable. We can do this. I mean, we see a lot of changes. Does that mean we just simply blindly trust? No, we've learned that lesson. Of course we don't, but we can work with each other. We can work on helping out each other. I look at this as one huge cleansing. It's a very large healing, but as above, so below. So the healing has to start within. To heal is to work with people, is to work through traumas, is to understand the kind of traumas that you have been through, the other person has been through, and it's about sitting down and talking through it. So we need to work on that at a very low level and realize if we do that at this local level with ourselves, that's how the world is going to be. So whatever we want to see happen in the world, we need to do in our own lives to the best of our ability. And you work with friends. Let friends, sit down and make yourself vulnerable. Say, hey, what do I need to work on? That's not a very easy thing to do, but you know what? It's very healing if you can be vulnerable, expose your heart, and work with one another and be open to constructive criticism is, I think, a very, very useful thing. And it's going to take that for us to get through everything that's coming.
Absolutely. And again, thank you guys for your support over on Patreon. We couldn't do it without you guys. You could still join the Patreon family for as little as $1 a month. And then at different tiers, there are different benefits, and there'll be different things that will come available as far as lessons and learning. So we do encourage you guys to come join us over there, and we thank you for your support. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.